who here has worked or is working with outsource development? רגע, מי לא מדבר אנגלית? אם זה יותר, אז אני אעשה בעברית. אוקיי. פלוסקי? סתם. אוקיי. סבבה, אז יש פה אנשים שגם עבדו עם outsource, שזה מעולה, כי זה מה שאנחנו עושים. ובלי קשר, המצגת הזאת נבנתה מתוך ניסיון שהיה לנו, כמו שרון אמר, עבדנו עם הרבה סטארט-אפים, והוא הזכיר את השמות. sorry. This presentation was built from our experience with working with startups. Ron mentioned a few, he mentioned the names that you know of, but we worked with a lot of that you never heard of and probably never will. And I brought some use cases, actual use cases, how to save money, because we are an outsourcing company, we think money. But if you're not doing outsourcing, think time. But time is money anyway. Even if you're doing the development yourself, you're giving up salary in a high-tech company, your time equals money. So this is really based on our own experience, and I will bring you concrete examples. So that's me. Like Ron already talked a lot about the company. I don't need to mention more. So this is about actually the technical side of being lean. Usually when we talk about lean startups, we talk about the feature set and when we go to market, when we raise capital. This is about the technical side, how to reduce development cost. It's based, like I said, on actual use cases, and it's not something specific to any technology, so I hope everybody who's building a startup can learn from this, even if it's mobile or web or whatever. Okay, so I'll start from the advantages of being small, and I'm concentrating on MVPs, on building the first version of the product. So when you're just starting, you have a lot of advantages you can use. For example, not having a lot of users. So sometimes your first audience is a specific set of users. A lot of tricks you can do to save development cost. So one way is fake features. I like this image. Fake features is basically saying, this is how I know the product is going to look. I know I will need this and this feature, but I know I can live perfectly without them in the first few versions. And I prefer to delay the development because I don't know exactly how I want it to be developed. And if I don't need it in the first version, why develop it? So a concrete example, I won't mention names, but I'll describe the applications that we built. It was a community application, like a mobile app, where users could register and request help from other users in the community. So it's physical help, like I want someone to walk my dog, I need someone to help me bring up furniture to the apartment, stuff like that. So it's based on location. And one of the features was very important for the entrepreneur, our client, was users can say, I want to be available in this radius. I don't want to be bugged with they call it help requests from users which are 100 miles away. So we need to filter the requests in the server according to the user's location. It's code that we need to write, and it will take time and money. Now the first version of the application was intended for an audience group of around 100 alpha users in a very specific city and even neighborhood. So this whole feature makes no sense to implement. We can implement it, but it will benefit nothing for the first users. So basically what we did is we put a slider in the application. The user can actually slide and select, I want to be available in a 7 miles radius, but basically it does nothing. So he still gets all the help requests from all the users. Why is this good? Because we didn't just delay the development cost, we also found out in the first version that this feature is not so good. So we didn't have to develop it at all. So we just saved a lot of money by not developing features that are not completely necessary for the first version, but we did want to make it seem like it exists. It's good for the investors, it's good for the users. They think it's a very rich application with a lot of features. This is Israeli mind. Okay, so we managed to save. By the way, if somebody wants to say something or ask something, please do it. Just raise your hand. Don't wait for a questions slide. Okay, just do it whenever you feel like. Even if it's, yes?
Sometimes you might put a feature, or might not, sorry, not put a feature, fake feature, and if someone will understand it's fake, you will lose the credibility.
Wait, yeah, I will repeat the question. He asked, sometimes you make a fake feature and users will realize it's fake and you will lose their credibility. So it's true. Everything I say here is limited to specific cases. In this case, it was a very well-defined group of users that the client chose. So she was in very direct communication with them. So she wasn't so afraid of losing them. Moreover, if users will, this is something that's a little bit hard to realize that it doesn't work. And even if it doesn't, okay, so it doesn't work. The main reason for the feature was that users will not be swamped with hundreds of help requests. But since it's still very narrow, they won't be. But it's a great question. I like it. Keep them coming. Okay. Next thing you can do, a lot of systems, and I'll give an example, require automated processes. Now, these automated processes they always require extra development, usually integration with other systems, and a lot of times we can postpone this to a later phase. If we start and we have 3 users in our system in the beginning, or 100, and we need to do something once a day to keep the system going, maybe it's not worth building an automated mechanism that does everything automatically. Maybe it's better in the beginning do some stuff manually. And this is something we advise our customers a lot. So for example, we have built a system called @chicago.com. It's a startup. It's not a startup anymore. It was acquired actually by Chicago Sun-Times newspaper. It's basically a system where you can buy email addresses and subdomains of chicago.com. So let's say you have a pizza place in Chicago, you can buy the email pizza@chicago.com and the subdomain. You actually pay monthly and you get the email address. So when this started, every user that purchased this bundle of email and subdomain, they had to set up the email forwarding and the subdomain, the DNS. So it's something they had to do manually for every user. Now they started with less than 1 new user every day. So yeah, we could have built something automated. Every time a user makes a purchase, we enable his email forwarding and we set up the DNS automatically. And if he cancels it, we have to do it automatically. But if you have less than 1 user every day, you just do it manually. It takes 5 minutes. You save a lot of time in development. You postpone the development, and sometimes you can even you actually save money because, for example, the client found that nobody really uses the subdomains. They mainly buy the product for the emails. So if we would build a very cool engine that automatically registers the subdomains, but users don't really use it, it's just a waste of money. So all these figures we try to really calculate how much money was saved for the client. Usually we don't do it. We actually did it just for this presentation. We found that a lot of money was saved. This is something that when you're building software you have to do every time you face some crossroad or something. If I choose this way, it will cost me, if I build the automatic engine, it will cost me 20,000. If I do it manually, I have to spend 5 minutes every day, it will cost me X. Then you can choose. Okay, this is actually something I made up. Don't Google funnel-driven development. I just made it up for this presentation. Basically, it means a lot of websites have a funnel of users. The user comes in, he searches for something, he looks up data, he leaves details, he makes a purchase, he returns, whatever. Now, let's say that I have very nice system, well designed, and people are coming in, they're going into my website, and none of them gets to the payment page. Okay, 0 people go into the payment page, or let's say even one goes in the payment page once a week. I don't really have to have the payment page ready, okay, because there are no users there. I don't have to invest so much code in fixing all the small bugs in the payment flow. What happens if users try to pay and the credit card fails? I have to deal with this stuff. There are no users in the payment page. I'm wasting money on development. So these are all actual use cases of our clients. So again, no names, but it's a website. It's currently live, actually. It's an entertainer marketplace. So you can, let's say you're looking for a clown for birthday. You can go inside and you browse through listings of clowns in your area, and you can actually pay and book this entertainer in the website. And there was a really complex, we received this system when it was already built, and there was a really complex flow of purchasing, of making the actual booking. The user had to purchase, so we make an API call to PayPal, and they still don't charge the user because the entertainer has to go into their homepage and approve the event, and only then it's charged. And what happens if it tries to charge it and the card fails? Blah blah blah. A lot of development cost. But no one paid. There were no paying users. Eventually, they completely changed the flow. They realized that in order to get users to pay, they need to change the flow. So users, instead of saying, okay, I want to pay the whole sum for the entertainer, they just click a button and say, check if this entertainer is available. And then the entertainer gets an email, he goes inside, and if he's available at that date, he says, yes, I'm available, and the customer gets an email, and then he can pay immediately for the reservation. So he just pays like 10% of the amount. So it's a completely different flow. We had to reprogram the whole thing. So all the old code he did nothing. It was there, but there were no users who paid during the old flow. So it was just a waste of money building it. And this could all have been saved if the entrepreneur waited until actual users are using the system and then fix all the bugs regarding payment. So this is a very nice use case. It actually continues to another point I want to make, which is focusing on the green flow. I think it's already inferred from what I said. Usually it's something that programmers really want to do, to take care of all the edge cases. Users need to pay, so you need to handle what happens if the charging fails, and what happens if it's recurring payments, and what happens if you have to change the currency, blah, 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 blah. You don't really need to handle all these cases in the beginning. Don't be afraid to lose one customer out of 100. So one customer will see a bug and he will leave. Okay, it's not so bad in the beginning. But if you're not going into the market or you're spending a lot of money where you don't need to, it's much more important. So in this case of the entertainer marketplace, they actually changed the flow again. So they realized that 99% of the time the users check for availability. 99% of the times the entertainers are available. So this whole flow is just useless. It's redundant. So they just did, users go into the website, they pay to reserve this entertainer, to לשריין אותו, and then let's say the entertainer can't make it in that day, he just calls them, they do the refund manually, nothing automatic, and the whole process is just way simpler. So the solution is not always in the software. Sometimes it's just, okay, let's focus on getting users to pay. Forget about what happens if the entertainer is not available. We'll deal with it. Okay, we can handle things. We don't have to rely only on the software. A lot of money could have been saved. It wasn't saved, but it could have been. Okay, think out of the box is very generic. A really cool example regards performance issues. So we had a client with a mobile application. It's an application where you can view streaming videos. It's actually paying you to see these videos. So users really wanted to get notified when new videos are available for them to see because they were paid to see these videos. So actually this app grew to 15,000 users in about 1 week or 2 weeks. And what happened is that the videos came from a streaming server, and 15 users accessing the same video at the same time required a lot of servers serving these videos simultaneously. So basically when there were just 100 users, everything worked perfectly. But when there were 15,000, they had to pay a lot of money to get the servers ready to serve so many streaming videos simultaneously. It would have cost a lot of money. And there's no actual technical solution to this. It's not like they can go to a competing company and pay 10 times less. If you want to so many users watching the same video simultaneously, you have to pay this amount of money. So basically what we did is we noticed that users, they go to watch the video usually around 5 to 10 minutes after they get the notification, because they really want to get inside and get their money. So instead of sending notification to 15,000 users at the same time, because there was only one new video per day or per 2 days. So basically what we did is just take the notification, spread it throughout the day, so in intervals, so let's say every 20 minutes, another batch of users get these notifications, like 500 users, 500 users more. And this is just a way to spread out the load across the day. It took us very little time to develop, it's not so complicated. And it just saved a lot of money. Cool, right? Yeah, some reaction. Any questions so far? Why are you chewing gum? It's not polite. No, I'm kidding. Okay, lean. I saw a lot of lean startups of entrepreneurs that say we really want to be lean, and then they translate it to cheap. So they say we're lean, we don't want to make any extra expenses, We want to do everything free and outsource, which is great. I love open source, sorry. I really love open source, it's good. But sometimes you have to consider the alternatives to doing everything free. So first of all, there are a lot of services that are available for us to use. The good ones cost money, because good things cost money. And I won't go into details because I know a lot of you are not technicals. But for example, sending push notifications to Android and iPhone, there's a service who does it for you. It's called Urban Airship. Above a certain amount of users, you have to start paying monthly. But they just do a lot of work for you. So if you think about $30 every month for 2 years, as opposed to even just 4 days of software development, then software development is very expensive, in case you didn't know. In case somebody is not a software developer and they want to raise their salary, go and learn software development. It pays a lot, and it also costs a lot to develop. So if you can pay $20 a month and save 4 days of development, usually it's worth it. Yes?
What is the second sentence?
This one?
The second one.
Heroku is a service that handles deployment for us and configuration of servers. So basically, you know AWS, Amazon, where you can, on the cloud, you can host your applications. So setting up a server on Amazon is not so hard, but still it will take you some time. We have actually a client that insisted not using Heroku because it costs $100 a month, and $100 a month for hosting, that's crazy. But $100 is 1 or 1.5 hours of development cost. And if you're using Heroku, you don't have to do anything, you just type in one command and you have a server running, database set, a lot of plugins you can use, logging, alerts if something goes down. Very easily you can scale the servers.
You put it here to compare it to Amazon, right?
Putting here as a general example, you can also, you don't have to use Amazon, you can use
That's
whatever.
cheaper. That one's cheaper.
Which one's cheaper?
Heroku.
No, Heroku is more expensive than Amazon.
Yeah.
They're using Amazon, so you're basically paying for Amazon and Heroku on top of it. So a lot of times, try comparing the cost against the development costs, and I think the numbers will be very logical. And of course, I've seen a lot of startups that refuse to hire developers, expert developers, consultants, because the paying 400 shekels an hour is crazy. I'm not going to pay 400 shekels an hour. But if someone can save you 50 hours of development, obviously it's worth it. And second, if you're hiring experts, you can actually learn more about what you're doing and become better at it. So that's something that's really hard to measure in money. How much is it worth it for me to learn more and become better at developing my own startup? It's priceless. And I think it's my final point, build to last, which kind of contradicts some of the stuff I said, because when you're building to last, you're thinking ahead. Until now I was talking about, let's keep it small and lean for the first version, but still if you want your startup to succeed, you have to keep in mind what's going to be in the next version and the version afterwards. So first of all, hiring cheap workforce. It's 100% failure. Maybe not for the first version, but the second version will be a catastrophe, because usually when we're talking cheap workforce, usually it's India or places like this. It's just, you have the first version, maybe it will work, maybe there will be only a few bugs, but the next version you have to throw it all away and start all over again, building the system. Obviously, it makes no sense. And I can tell you that we received a lot of systems that were already built by cheap workforce, and you can't really rewrite everything because there are users, there are customers. You want to keep adding features, you want to fix bugs. You can't hold off the development for 1 month and say, I'm building it all over again because this code is crap, I don't want to touch it. You can't do that. You have to do it over time, and it takes much more money and much more effort. We really felt sorry for our clients who didn't go with us initially.
So
Yes.
basically it's the same thing as outsourcing. Because if we take you as an outsourcing and you produce the first version and then you go bankrupt or
But we're not cheap, we're very expensive.
oh it's even worse. And then you go bankrupt and you end up with 100,000 lines of code. We don't know nothing about it.
No, so first of all, I'm not talking about some kind of crisis where your developer walks out on you in the middle or bankrupts or something. I'm talking about usually they finish the first version, and if you have good code, then you can take another developer and he will continue the work. So it doesn't have to rebuild everything. So still it's better to get something that's more robust and built. Like the code is not messy, it's completely different.
How do you feel about relying on external libraries?
On external libraries?
Yeah. For example, let's say I'm using a library and it saves me a lot of development time actually now, but then I want to add a feature and this library doesn't have it.
No, that's a great question. It's really hard to answer. It's worth to put in the extra hours in really digging in, because sometimes external libraries, you go to their website and they show you how easy it is to set up. But if you start digging, you see that it misses a lot of features and stuff. So it's really worth to, first of all, find someone who actually uses it in a real system, in a real life system. Just an example, we were using Google Maps on a mobile application, a mobile HTML application. And we thought, okay, Google Maps, it's the best, or one of the best, it's Google. It's going to be great. And we used something that wraps it in a JavaScript. And we just found that the performance is unbearable. We had to change to Leaflet. So, but we did it while we were developing and in the beginning of the project, so it wasn't so expensive. So basically I would say start from the hard features. Start from not just make it work, but try to push the library to the edge. Did I answer the question? Okay. Okay, yes, see.
For those of us who aren't coders or technical, how do we identify who actually knows what they're doing before you start? Because, I mean,
That's a great, actually my partner talked about that. That's a great question. How do you identify?
I have an answer.
How do you identify if you're working with outsource? How do you identify someone?
I can answer.
You want to answer?
Yeah.
Just want to hear the
I had a
question
friend
first.
who was learning.
What's the question?
become a
The
lawyer.
question, I just asked the question because some people didn't hear. She asked, how do you identify if the workforce you're working with or the developers are good or bad if you don't have any technical background?
So
You want to answer.
I knew someone who was he was studying law at the university. He was I think it was 80 kilos, sportsman. After 1 year, he made a shift. He became a coder. Now he weighs 200 kilos. He has long hair and long nails. He's a good coder.
Okay, so the answer is,
Take the fat guy.
if he weighs a
Take the
lot,
fat guy.
he has long hair and no style in his clothes,
So dirty.
he's a good programmer. I don't agree with that.
what's the real
I
answer?
consider myself also
Have life.
a very good developer. And
No, but you have some website to compare.
if you're an entrepreneur, take someone who's on your side, who's technical, because he can come to the meeting and ask questions and see if the other person who you're talking with knows what he's talking about. If you're going somewhere and you say, and let's say you're going to an outsourcing company, and you say, here's my system, it does this and that, and users can log in and they can register and blah blah blah, and the guy just nods his head, says, yeah, no problem, we'll give you a price quote. He doesn't ask anything, he doesn't propose new ways. That's a little fishy. Okay? Usually, if it's someone who knows what he's doing and someone who has built a few systems in his life, he will have a lot of questions. He will tell you a lot of stuff. This is impossible, this is very hard to implement, maybe you should do it like this. But the most important thing, in my opinion, is that he has long hair and he weighs a lot.
I have a question.
Yes.
There are outsourcing companies in Europe, like Ukraine and stuff like that. What are your benefits as opposed to them? Like, because they are cheaper than companies in Israel, obviously.
Obviously, you have very good Ukrainian programmers. Usually, it's just very hard, the distance. A lot of people just prefer to work with someone from Israel. They can see, they can go to his office and knock on his door and talk the same language.
Speak with them with Skype, with walking and go in.
No, you can see, obviously there's a lot of outsourcing in Ukraine, and obviously Ukraine is better than, in my opinion, it's better than India. But
So
still, the developers, the level of developers in Ukraine, like the general level, is lower than the level in Israel. So if you're building something,
also like 10% of the cost. I mean, it's not. I'm
No,
not
Yeah.
sure it's
not
lower.
10%.
it's not 10%.
It's
not
like
10%
30%
anymore.
less. But
All right. So
if you take the best Ukrainian
used to be.
company, if you take the best Ukrainian company and the best
Mhm.
Israeli one, I mean, you know, if it's only the language barrier and the convenience, like what else?
I can't testify about other outsourcing companies. I can tell you that we have a lot of added value of not just doing the actual development, but designing the product with you and selecting the features and advising you about how to save money and how to reach more users and stuff. And we also we had a lot of startups who started with us. We built the MVP, and obviously they didn't want to stay forever with us, so they hired a developer, and sometimes their developer was sitting in our office and learning about the system until he took over completely. So this is a very strong advantage if you want to get rid of the Ukrainians in some point. It will be harder, but it's possible. I'm not saying it's impossible. אוקיי. יש לי זמן או שאני כבר? טוב. Yes, כן.
If you're approaching a project that you know will have a mobile version and a web version, on which will you go first?
Mobile.
Like an app and the web version?
Let's say you think of a service,
Mm-hmm.
and you know that the service can be accessed either through a normal computer with the web browser, or you have a different version for the mobile, because the mobile has a different UI. You want to
But
use
via the browser.
Now, how would you start? How would you market it as a mobile application or as a web?
Well, first of all, a lot of people don't know that now almost 30% of users, that's just an average, surf your website through your mobile. So usually we try to make a responsive website, and that you can surf through the web and the mobile, and it will look great on both.
I'm talking about
A native application.
Not the technology, but as a strategy, as a
No, so building
as a
something
marketing
responsive
strategy.
means that the first version.
No, but as a marketing strategy, how would you how do you go about the business? You would start up with promote your mobile or your web.
First of all, I'm not doing marketing strategy.
Can I try and answer that from a marketing perspective?
Here's the expert in marketing.
So it always depends on how are you going to use the product. If your product is mobile first in terms of how I interact with it, I mean, Twitter is better for mobile than it will ever be for desktop for certain users. But for other things, it would be better to do on the web, right? So you have to understand what, where, and when are your optimal or ideal users will use the product. If it's Instagram, for example, it's crappy for the web. It will never be big on the web because you do it as you go. So it's obvious that there you need to have a mobile first as a strategy. If you're doing a productivity platform, then most people who use the productivity platform will usually do it in the office with their team. If you're doing a to-do list, on the other hand, to-do lists are better on mobile because you do it as you go. Grocery and whatever you think of as you think of it. So I think I don't think there's a one answer to fit that. The question is, what is the optimal way to use my product on the go or when I'm sitting at my desktop?
So if someone didn't hear, I'll just summarize. He asked if it's better to focus on the web first or the mobile first. And what's your name?
Wait.
Wait.
I'm the next one.
Ah, you're the next one. He's the next one.
And
I sense something weird about. He said that it really depends on the application. So
and feature-wise, would you use the same? Would you restrict the mobile version, or you must have all the features from this product?
Let's save this question to Roy's presentation. Okay, great. So, technically speaking, there are a lot of ways to build mobile versions and mobile applications, native applications. You can do it with HTML, you can do it with native programming. And if you're not a programmer, then you have no way of knowing if it's possible for your case or not. So you better ask someone who knows about it. But you have to keep these things in mind. So if you're building something for the web, and you're saying, first of all, I'm going to focus on web users. Mobile users will look at the website, they'll say, it's not so friendly, but never mind. That's okay. You still need to think, my next step will be make it mobile friendly, make it a responsive website. So it actually starts from the designer. If your designer likes to put a lot of items on the screen without any logical flow, it will be very hard to make the same version for mobile. You have to build it all over again for mobile. You have to have two different code bases, one for web and one for mobile. If the design is more light and it's more flowing, you can do it responsive and it will just fit automatically on web and mobile. That's from the designer point of view. From the programmer point of view, you have libraries that are responsive by nature, like Twitter Bootstrap, if you heard about it. So even if you're just building the web version, you can build it, but prepare it for the mobile version. So when you have to make the mobile version, you don't have to build everything from scratch. And we did it. We had applications that were built just for web, and when you want to make it mobile ready, you just rebuild everything. And also, if you're going to have an actual application in the store, in the App Store, in iTunes, in the Play Market, then a lot of times you can write it in HTML, which means it's the same code that runs on the web will run on the application. So you don't have to rewrite it for iPhone, rewrite it for Android. It's not always the case, but in the last year, a lot of applications are actually HTML applications. That's also something to keep in mind. If you're trying to build something that will actually succeed, users will use it, you want it to be on mobile, something to think about. And also, don't try to optimize for 1 million users, but try to think, where are my pitfalls going to be? So if I have an app that users are requesting something from the server every second, even if I have 1,000 users, my servers are going to fall. So this is something me or my developer have to think about it in advance. Okay, if the users just go into my website, they get the information and it's static, you can serve a million users a day, it doesn't matter. And also, I mentioned software as a service. A lot of times, this software as a service are very cheap in the beginning, but you don't notice that if you pass a certain limit, they become really expensive. And after you're already dependent on them, it's hard to get out of them. You're stuck with them, and you just pay a lot of money on it. So use SaaS, but look at how much it will cost you if you succeed. Hopefully you'll succeed. I think it's the last one.
You recommended about the company of size?
Depends on the what you want. So SaaS is just
Yeah, I know, for mobile application.
SaaS is just software as a service.
Hosting, for server hosting.
For hosting.
Yeah.
It really depends. We use usually we use a Roku because it's the fastest to deploy. But if not, then Amazon, AWS, Google Cloud.
Yeah.
You have a parse, by the way. If you're just building a simple mobile app, you don't even have to develop a server. You have parse.com, which you can define the database and which entities you have, and it just implements a server for you if it's a simple application. Questions? Answers? Thank you very much. יש הפסקה?